Pippa Middleton, Kate's sister, is reportedly finally talking about her marriage to billionaire James Matthews after years of silence. Insiders suggest shocking details might emerge, shaking her carefully guarded private life. Facing intense public pressure, is this a divorce bombshell or Pippa reclaiming her story? Her words could change everything. Middleton sisters' marriage explodes. The truth behind the headlines. For years, Pippa Middleton has been the master of dignified silence, a woman who navigated the treacherous currents of being Kate Middleton's sister with a carefully cultivated air of unflappable grace. But no more. In a move that has allegedly sent tremors through London's elite and left royal watchers utterly agog, Pippa, as of late May 2025, has reportedly shattered her long-held vow of privacy. She's said to be opening up, finally, about the real story behind her high-profile marriage to the enigmatic multimillionaire James Matthews. Forget the glossy magazine spreads and the curated public appearances. Insiders are whispering about shocking new details and a brutally honest reckoning that threatens to obliterate the carefully constructed illusion of her picture-perfect life. After what feels like an eternity of quiet speculation, fueled by her increasingly solo public appearances, a noticeable cooling in family dynamics, and a backdrop of relentless external pressures, Pippa is supposedly ready to unleash her truth. Why now? What colossal pressure, what final straw could have pushed this fiercely private woman, who once lamented the pain of being publicly bullied by an intrusive press, to willingly step back into the harshest, most unforgiving spotlight imaginable? Is this the dramatic prelude to a messy, high-stakes divorce, one involving staggering fortunes and deeply entangled family loyalties? Or is this something far more profound, a deeply personal declaration of independence from a life lived under the suffocating shadow of relentless public expectation and, perhaps, years of mounting private disappointment and unspoken disillusionment? One thing is absolutely certain. When Pippa Middleton finally decides to talk, the world doesn't just listen. It holds its breath, and the carefully polished, impeccably maintained facade of high society braces for an impact of seismic proportions. The whispers are deafening. Pippa's ready to speak, and what she has to say could change everything. Remember the whirlwind, the stuff of breathless tabloid headlines? When Philippa Pippa Middleton, the vivacious younger sister of Catherine, the then Duchess of Cambridge and future Queen of England, first crossed paths with the debonair James Matthews at his family's ultra-exclusive celebrity magnet Eden Rock Hotel in St. Bart's, it seemed like a scene ripped straight from the pages of a glossy romance novel. The sun-drenched Caribbean paradise, the pristine, stunningly beautiful beaches, the air thick with wealth and exclusivity. It was, by all accounts, the absolute perfect, almost cliched backdrop for a glamorous love story to ignite. But life, as it so often does, particularly for those orbiting the royal family, was far more complicated, far messier than any fairy tale. At the time of that fateful St. Bart's encounter, Pippa was reportedly in a serious, committed relationship with Alex Loudon, a devastatingly handsome former professional cricket star who had been her steadfast rock, her quiet supporter during her sudden, dizzying, and entirely unexpected ascent into global fame following that iconic bridesmaid dress moment at William and Kate's 2011 royal wedding. Yet despite being ostensibly happy and settled with Alex, sources close to Pippa at the time say she found something undeniably special, something quietly but powerfully compelling, in the older, more enigmatic James Matthews, a man known for his preternatural calm, his steely self-assurance, and his unwavering reliability, qualities that perhaps offered a stark, appealing contrast to the often fickle, headline-chasing world she increasingly inhabited. She reportedly couldn't get him out of her mind, even after returning to the familiar routines of her London life. To the outside world, to the casual observer, her ongoing relationship with Alex Loudon still seemed perfectly on track, solid even. But those closest to Pippa, her inner circle of friends, reportedly sensed a seismic, almost imperceptible shift in her demeanor, in her focus. A strange, almost unnerving new quietness, a subtle emotional distance, had reportedly settled between Pippa and Alex. And James Matthews. In a masterclass of sophisticated discretion, he didn't try to force himself into the unfolding situation, didn't create any awkwardness or overt drama. He was simply and effectively there, a subtle, reassuring, almost ghostly presence in the background of her life, never intruding, never demanding her attention, never pushing for anything, but always somehow a lingering, intriguing option. His approach, it was said, was like a soothing, calming presence amidst the often chaotic, high-pressure whirlwind of her increasingly public existence. Her relationship with Alex Loudon eventually, and perhaps inevitably, given the undercurrents, came to an end. The breakup, when it happened, was described by society columnists as remarkably calm, almost unnervingly peaceful, conspicuously devoid of any public fireworks or bitter recriminations. Some simply saw it as a natural, amicable parting of ways, two people growing in different directions. Others, however, those who knew Pippa's more complex backstory and were aware of her brief but potent encounter with the older, wealthier James Matthews in St. Bart's, suspected there was far more to it than met the public eye. And, as events would later prove, they were absolutely, undeniably correct. Something deeper, something more significant, was quietly, almost imperceptibly, developing beneath the surface. Not with a sudden dramatic explosion of passion, but with the slow, inexorable, almost gravitational pull of an unspoken, unacknowledged, yet deeply felt connection. Shortly after the end of her relationship with Loudon, Pippa embarked on a new, very public, and highly photographed romance with Nico Jackson, a man described by the ever-watchful tabloids as intelligent, impeccably well-dressed, charming, and exceptionally well-connected within London's financial circles. The paparazzi, naturally, went into an absolute feeding frenzy. Pippa and Nico were instantly the hot new society couple, frequently snapped on glamorous outings, their dates meticulously dissected by fashion bloggers, their every public move generating a fresh wave of breathless headlines. It was, by all accounts, fashionable. It was undeniably classy. It was, perhaps in retrospect, a little too perfect, a little too performatively public for what Pippa truly craved. Because even with this new, high-profile relationship in full, glittering swing, James Matthews, the quiet, patient man from St. Bart's, was still there, a constant, if distant presence lingering in the deep background of her life, never overtly interfering, never causing any trouble or awkwardness, but also, crucially, never completely, fully disappearing from her wider social orbit. And over time, as the initial excitement of the romance with Nico Jackson perhaps began to wane, James's silent, unwavering, almost stoic presence, his understated yet consistent support from afar, reportedly began to hold far more genuine, lasting value for Pippa than the fleeting, often superficial thrill of a perfect public relationship played out for the cameras. Nico was undeniably charming, impeccably polished, perhaps, some whispered, a little too focused on the glittering outward appearances that their high-pressure society demanded. James, by stark contrast, was increasingly seen by Pippa as offering something far more substantial, something more real. Profound depth, almost saintly patience, and a deep, almost intuitive understanding of the complex, often conflicted woman behind the headlines and the famous surname. So when Pippa and Nico Jackson eventually, and rather quietly, broke up in 2015, it didn't come as an earth-shattering surprise to many of those who knew her well, those who had sensed the underlying mismatch. The split wasn't acrimonious, not publicly at least, but it decisively, cleanly paved the way for something far more meaningful, something that had perhaps been patiently, inexorably destined all along. James Matthews re-entered Pippa's life, this time not just as a distant, intriguing acquaintance from a sun-drenched island, but as a man who had waited with remarkable patience and perhaps strategic foresight for precisely the right moment, the right opening. Their romantic relationship, when it finally officially ignited, started with characteristic discretion, far away from the prying, insatiable eyes of the press. It was, by all accounts, a slow burn, a relationship carefully built on intricate shared feelings, mutual respect, and subtle, profound personal transformations. They had, after all, been acquainted for a very long time, their paths having crossed numerous times at various, often pivotal stages in their respective, very different lives. There had always been, observers who knew them both noted with knowing glances, a subtle, unspoken, almost electric tension between them, a silent, intriguing dance of unasked questions, and perhaps deeply held, silent, hopeful aspirations. It seemed, in retrospect to many, as if they had been orbiting each other for years, like two celestial bodies gradually, inevitably, being pulled closer and closer by an irresistible, unseen, gravitational force. And at last, it seemed, the timing, the alignment of their personal stars was finally, absolutely perfect for a true union. They took their time with their rekindled and now overtly romantic relationship, deliberately not feeling rushed by external expectations, not feeling pressured by the inevitable public interest. They reportedly cherished spending quiet, quality time together, meticulously building their deep bond in much-desired privacy, far away from the relentless, often brutal, public eye that had so defined Pippa's recent years. Then, in the summer of July 2016, during a peaceful, idyllic, and reportedly very romantic trip to the picturesque Tranquil Lake District in northwest England, James Matthews, the man who had waited with such extraordinary patience, finally, decisively, popped the question to Pippa. He presented her with a stunning, reportedly flawless, Art Deco-inspired Asher-cut diamond ring, a ring said to be worth a king's ransom. She, by all accounts from friends who were later told, happily, joyfully, and perhaps tearfully, accepted his proposal. The news of their engagement, when it finally, inevitably broke into the public domain, spread like absolute wildfire across global media, and heartfelt congratulations poured in from every corner of the globe, from royalty and celebrities to ordinary well-wishers. Pippa, at the time, was 33 years old. James, the older, more established financier, his birth year is often cited as 1975, which would have made him closer to 41 at the time of their engagement, a point of much discussion and some confusion among royal watchers and society columnists. And it seemed, for that blissful, sun-drenched moment, like everything had fallen perfectly, beautifully, almost magically into place for them at last. Their wedding, held on May 20th, 2017 at St. Mark's Church in Englefield, Berkshire, was a quintessentially English, utterly beautiful, and, by royal adjacent standards at least, remarkably intimate and tasteful ceremony. It was attended only by their closest family and, of course, a carefully curated list of very high-profile friends. Naturally, Prince William, her beloved sister Kate Middleton, then the Duchess of Cambridge, now the Princess of Wales, a still single Prince Harry, and even Meghan Markle, who was then Harry's serious and soon-to-be royal girlfriend, were among the most notable guests, adding a significant touch of royal stardust to the proceedings. A cherubic, scene-stealing Princess Charlotte and an equally adorable Prince George played special prominent roles in the ceremony, much to the delight of the assembled guests and the world's media. "He's amazing," Princess Eugenie, a cousin to William and Harry, had once gushed about a young Prince George, though not at this specific event. "He's a very, very dear boy, and he's brought a lot of pleasure and fun for all of us, the whole family." Pippa, on her wedding day, looked the absolute picture of calm radiance, a vision of understated elegance in her bespoke Giles Deacon lace gown, while James, ever composed, ever discreet, seemed genuinely, profoundly happy and immensely proud. The picturesque country church, the fairy tale setting, their evident, palpable love for one another, it all brought a much-needed, refreshing sense of pure joy and uncomplicated happiness to a family, and indeed to a public, often starved for such straightforwardly positive, royal-related news. It felt at the time like more than just another lavish society wedding celebration. It felt like the deeply satisfying, almost preordained start of a brand new, promising chapter. A chapter that had been years, perhaps even a lifetime, in the slow, patient, almost fated making. But as we now reportedly know, as of the shocking whispers emerging in May 2025, even the most beautiful fairy tales can sometimes sour, and even the most promising, seemingly perfect new chapters can, tragically, have brutally unhappy, deeply disillusioning endings. Behind Chelsea's closed doors. After their fairy tale wedding, Pippa Middleton and James Matthews seemed to step back from the spotlight and move into a world of incredible wealth and very strong privacy. They settled into a huge, stunning mansion in Chelsea, one of London's most expensive and paparazzi-heavy neighborhoods. This wasn't just a fancy house. It was like a palace in the city. Reports said the home was worth around $17 million and came with every possible luxury feature anyone could want. They had a full gym for workouts, a soundproof home cinema for quiet movie nights, a high-tech garage that could store several luxury cars, and even special rooms for their house staff, like nannies and housekeepers. They might have also had private security. Even with all this over-the-top luxury, the couple chose a quiet, very private life. It was the complete opposite of the red carpets, flashing cameras, and constant media attention that Pippa had once dealt with, whether she liked it or not. They didn't show off their wealth, and they didn't try to become a famous celebrity couple like other people connected to the royal family. They didn't try to make headlines or seek attention. Friends who talked to the press said that the couple focused on building a peaceful, safe, and loving home for their growing family. In October 2018, Pippa gave birth to their first child, a son named Arthur Michael William Matthews. During her pregnancy, she wrote a few articles for Waitrose Weekend magazine where she talked about staying healthy and active while expecting. These columns were part of a lifestyle series linked to the high-end British supermarket chain. Pippa, who had always loved sports and was even a former sports scholar, talked about how important it was to keep moving and stay healthy during pregnancy. When she became a mom, she told friends that it was the best thing that had ever happened to her. She felt deep happiness and a strong sense of purpose. The public mostly reacted with joy, seeing Arthur's birth as a happy step forward in Pippa's life. After Arthur, the couple welcomed 2 more children without much media attention. A daughter named Grace Elizabeth Jane in March 2021, and another daughter, Rose Louise Victoria, in summer 2022. Unlike Arthur's birth, these 2 were kept very private. There were no press photos on hospital steps, no big interviews in fancy magazines. They wanted to keep these family moments quiet and personal. It looked like Pippa and James were becoming more protective of their family life with each child. They didn't share many details, and they worked hard to protect their children from the media. They didn't post pictures of them on social media, which was very different from other famous families, including some royals, who often do just that. Inside their beautiful Chelsea home, Pippa and James made sure to give their kids a normal, calm, and private life, even though they lived in the spotlight. They stayed away from the paparazzi as much as they could and put in daily effort to create a safe environment for their children. Their mansion, no matter how fancy, was mostly a secure space to keep their family safe from the harsh judgment and pressures of public life. Over time, Pippa started showing up less and less at public events, especially the ones that were just about being seen or being part of society's upper circles. But she stayed active and was often seen jogging in the park or biking around the city. She kept a healthy and determined lifestyle, even if she was no longer in the spotlight all the time. Pippa also stayed involved with charity, but only for causes that really mattered to her. She chose carefully, making sure her time and image were tied to efforts that reflected her personal beliefs. Even though she wasn't out in public often, she still had a powerful image and used it for good when she believed it was truly important. Back in April 2013, long before she married James Matthews or became known for her high-profile relationships, Pippa Middleton had already started showing her deep interest in helping others. That year, she began working closely with the Mary Hare School, a special school in the UK that helps children who are deaf. This cause soon became something she cared about deeply and personally. It wasn't just something she did for attention. She really wanted to make a difference in these children's lives. Then, just a year later in 2014, her charity work reached a new level. Pippa was officially made an ambassador for the British Heart Foundation, one of the UK's most respected health charities. But this new role wasn't just about posing for photos or putting her name on a press release. Pippa got fully involved. She didn't just talk about helping, she proved it through action. That same year, she completed 2 very tough challenges to raise money and awareness for the causes she supported. The first one was a massive 3,000-mile bike race across the United States. That's about 4,828 kilometers, crossing deserts, mountains, and long stretches of tough road. It's one of the hardest endurance bike races in the world. And if that wasn't enough, she also took part in a long-distance swim event in Istanbul, Turkey. Both of these challenges were physically and mentally demanding, but she pushed through and finished them. These weren't just thrill-seeking adventures. She used them to bring attention to the causes she loved and to raise a lot of money to support them. Pippa also donated personal items for auction, including the very bike she rode and the special gear she wore during her races. These items helped raise even more money when sold at charity auctions. She also regularly attended big fundraising events, including the British Heart Foundation's famous Roll Out the Red Ball, where she showed strong support year after year. Then, in 2015, Pippa teamed up with British fashion designer Tabitha Webb to create a special outfit, a pink floral dress, and a matching scarf. The items became very popular, and all the money from their sales went straight to the British Heart Foundation. This wasn't just a fun fashion project, it was another way for her to combine creativity with a cause that truly mattered to her. Her love for helping others through sports didn't slow down. In fact, she kept joining more and more extreme charity events. She did a bike ride from London to Brighton, which is a famous and challenging event that many people use to raise funds. But the event that really stood out was a special swim-run race in Sweden. It was incredibly hard, with racers swimming and running long distances across islands and rough waters. Pippa didn't do it alone. She competed with her brother James Middleton and her fiancé at the time, now her husband, James Matthews. This race was especially meaningful to them because it honored James Matthews' brother, Michael Matthews, who died tragically in 1999. Michael had reached the top of Mount Everest, but sadly passed away during the climb back down at just 22 years old. The race helped raise money for the Michael Matthews Foundation, a charity started by the Matthews family. Its mission is to bring education to poor, faraway places around the world where children often don't have access to schools or learning tools. Through this race and other efforts, the foundation has helped support many projects that give hope to children who need it most. In 2016, Pippa used her interest in entertaining and party planning to write and publish a book called Heartfelt. True to her values, she donated all the profits from the book directly to the British Heart Foundation. It was another way for her to turn her public image and personal passions into something that could help others. During all of these busy years, while Pippa was out raising awareness and completing difficult challenges, James Matthews was also doing his part. Even though he had a demanding career in finance, a field known for its stress and long hours, he always made time to support the family's charitable foundation. He didn't grab headlines, but behind the scenes, he was always present, helping where he could and backing causes that mattered to his family. Together, Pippa and James stayed active in many charity events. They continued to love sports and fitness and spent a lot of time doing activities together. They went biking, running, swimming, and stayed healthy as a team. People who followed their story often said their bond seemed to grow stronger each year, thanks to their shared values, strong work ethic, and mutual love for living an active lifestyle. It's clear that for both of them, charity was never just about showing up or writing a check. It was about living out what they believed in, working hard, staying healthy, and doing good. They used their public positions to make a real impact, and they did it in a very hands-on way. Still, being in the spotlight had its downside. Pippa once spoke about the pressure that comes with fame. She said something very real and personal. "I think people feel they can say something about you online or on a web page when they would never say it to your face, but they think that's okay." That short sentence says a lot about what she was dealing with. Even as she quietly did meaningful work behind the scenes, people judged her without knowing her full story. Despite that, she kept going, never letting harsh words stop her from doing what mattered. Through all the noise, Pippa stayed true to herself. She built a life that focused on family, fitness, and giving back. Whether she was biking across the U.S., swimming in Turkey, creating fashion for charity, or publishing a book to raise funds, she always brought energy and heart to everything she did. It wasn't about fame, it was about purpose. And that's something that truly sets her apart. This moment was one of the first clear signs that Pippa truly felt the pressure of being in the public eye. She knew, probably more than most, how much people watched her every move. The constant attention, the unfair comments, the judgment. She was clearly aware of it all. Even so, she didn't back down. She kept moving forward, showing bravery and strength by staying active in the things she cared about. She continued to take part in big, physically demanding events like marathons and charity races. She was often seen skiing and biking in challenges that pushed her limits, and many times her husband James Matthews was right there beside her. James, before his current career in finance, had once been a professional race car driver. He was used to competition, to putting everything he had into tough, fast-paced challenges. Now, instead of racing on tracks, he seemed to put all that energy into the athletic events he did with Pippa. Together, they looked like a strong team, supporting each other, staying fit, and helping raise money for good causes. But behind that perfect picture of a happy couple doing great things together, some are now wondering if small problems had already started to form. Was their picture-perfect life really as solid as it looked from the outside? Were there tiny cracks, barely noticeable at first, that hinted at deeper issues? Issues that might have been growing quietly in the background for years? Some people close to the situation now believe the answer might be yes. They're starting to say that maybe those small cracks were more serious than anyone knew. Maybe the pressures of always being in public, always being watched, were slowly taking a toll on their relationship. Maybe Pippa and James, for all their shared interests and public support for one another, were very different in private. Maybe their hopes, their needs, or even their expectations for marriage didn't always match. Every little thing gets noticed. Every photo, every outing, every smile, or lack of one, gets studied and talked about. That kind of attention can be incredibly hard to live with, even for people who seem confident and collected on the outside. It's even harder when you're trying to build a private life, raise a family, and stay true to yourself while the world watches. And so, the recent whispers making headlines today are not just surprising, they're heartbreaking. People are now saying that the cracks in Pippa and James's relationship were real, and that they ran deeper than anyone had guessed. These problems might have started a long time ago, even during the very years when they seemed happiest and most in sync. If that's true, then all the smiles, the public events, and even their shared passions may have been doing more to cover the problems than to fix them. None of this takes away from the real work and good they did together, their charity work, their physical achievements, their dedication to family life. Those things were real. But behind the scenes, where cameras couldn't follow, there might have been struggles that few ever saw. Maybe they both tried to hold everything together, and maybe they truly believed that their bond could survive anything. But now, the story may be changing. What once looked like a perfect match is being viewed in a new light. Those hairline cracks, once ignored or unseen, might have grown larger over time. And now, people are asking the hardest questions. Were the problems always there? Were they just hidden behind public smiles and matching charity t-shirts? What we know for sure is that living under constant attention while trying to manage a relationship and raise a family is incredibly hard. And sometimes even the strongest looking couples can be dealing with hidden pain.